Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of crystal skulls, ancient artifact, or Victorian fake. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. They have inspired novels, films, and New Age spirituality. They have been attributed to Atlantis, to extraterrestrials, to the Maya, and to the Aztec. They have been claimed to possess supernatural healing powers, to generate energy fields, and to encode ancient knowledge in their crystal structure. The crystal skulls, life-sized human skull carvings in quartz crystal, are among the most famous and most debated artifacts in the world. And according to the Smithsonian Institution, the British Museum, and nearly every scientific institution that has examined them, they are fakes. Not ancient Maya or Aztec artifacts, but 19th-century European productions made with modern rotary tools and sold to wealthy collectors who believed what they wanted to believe. This is the scientific consensus, but the full story of how they were made, who made them, and what they tell us about the market for ancient antiquities is far more interesting than either the supernatural claims or the simple dismissal suggests. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The official story of technological progress follows a reassuring arc: stone tools giving way to bronze, bronze to iron, iron to steel, and finally, the Industrial Revolution catapulting humanity into the modern age. In this narrative, each generation inherits a slightly more sophisticated toolkit than the last, and no knowledge is ever truly lost. It is a comfortable story. It is also, in key respects, demonstrably false. History is littered with technological achievements that appeared centuries before their supposed invention, vanished after the cultures that created them collapsed, and were reinvented, often with great difficulty, by later civilizations who had no idea the knowledge had ever existed. Roman concrete was stronger and more durable than most modern concrete, and was not matched again until the 21st century. Greek fire, the incendiary weapon that protected the Byzantine Empire for centuries, has never been fully reproduced. Damascus steel, capable of holding an edge that modern metallurgists struggle to replicate, disappeared with the craftsmen who made it. These are not myths. They are documented historical losses of genuine technical knowledge. When we encounter an object from the ancient world that should not exist, a battery from Baghdad dated to the Parthian era, a computing mechanism salvaged from an ancient shipwreck, a map showing geographical features that were not officially discovered for another millennium, the temptation is to dismiss it as misidentified or misstated. That dismissal is sometimes warranted. But when such objects accumulate, when the pattern becomes too consistent to ignore, the honest response is to ask whether our model of ancient capability is simply wrong. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding crystal skulls, ancient artifact or Victorian fake, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The most famous crystal skull is the Mitchell-Hedges skull, reportedly found by adventurer F. A. Mitchell-Hedges in 1924 at the Maya site of Lubanton in Belize. It is a life-sized quartz crystal skull of extraordinary clarity and craftsmanship, with a detachable jaw, a feature not found in most other crystal skulls. Mitchell-Hedges himself was silent about the skull for many years and only publicized it after World War II. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered scientific analysis of the Mitchell-Hedges skull and similar objects, including the British Museum skull and the Smithsonian skull, has been conducted using electron microscopy and scanning electron microscopy, X-ray crystallography, and surface analysis. These studies found microscopic tool marks consistent with modern rotary lapidary equipment rather than the hand tools available to pre-Columbian craftsmen. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Smithsonian research published in 2008 confirmed that the Smithsonian crystal skull, donated by an anonymous source in 1992, had surface marks from modern cutting and polishing equipment inconsistent with pre-Columbian lapidary technology. The British Museum reached similar conclusions about their skull. Neither institution believes their skull is a pre-Columbian artifact. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, despite extensive documentation of Maya and Aztec stone carving traditions, no crystal skull has ever been found in a documented archaeological context, excavated with proper stratigraphic records, at any pre-Columbian site. Every known major crystal skull has a provenance that begins with a 19th or early 20th century collector purchase. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of quartz crystal of the quality required for large-scale carving was available in both pre-Columbian Mesoamerica and in 19th century Europe, where the lapidary trade was highly sophisticated. The most likely production centers for the crystal skulls are French and German lapidary workshops of the 19th century, which produced sophisticated stone carvings for the antiquities market. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: F.A. Mitchell-Hedges has been extensively investigated as a biographical subject, and his accounts of his own explorations are largely considered unreliable by historians. The crystal skull does not appear in any published account of his Lubanton expedition from the 1924 period. The discovery story appears to have been constructed retrospectively. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological errors. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. we are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain crystal skulls, ancient artifact, or Victorian fake. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the major crystal skulls are 19th-century European fabrications produced in French or German lapidary workshops, probably in the Idar-Oberstein region of Germany, which was a major center of quartz crystal carving, and old to collectors as pre-Columbian artifacts. This is the scientific consensus supported by materials analysis and the absence of any documented archaeological provenance. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the crystal skulls are genuine pre-Columbian artifacts of unknown cultural origin whose provenance was obscured during the antiquities trade of the colonial period. The toolmark evidence is challenged by some researchers who argue that pre-Columbian craftsmen using quartz-on-quartz abrasion could have produced similar surface patterns. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that some crystal skulls may be genuine pre-Columbian objects and others modern fakes, and the difficulty of distinguishing them reflects the sophistication of both the original craftsmen and the 19th-century forgers, rather than a single uniform explanation for all examples. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding crystal skulls, ancient artifact, or Victorian fake does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes scanning electron microscopy of the British Museum skull, published in the Journal of Archaeological Science. Found polishing marks consistent with modern rotary pulleys, hing wheels containing harder abrasives than those available in the pre-Columbian period. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented X-ray crystallography of the Mitchell Hedges skull showed that it was carved from a single piece of quartz crystal cut against the natural axis, a technique that requires specific knowledge of crystal structure and produces characteristic internal stress patterns consistent with modern lapidary methods. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed no pre-Columbian small-scale crystal artifact from any documented archaeological context shows the same level of technical achievement as the major crystal skulls, suggesting either that the skulls represent an entirely different manufacturing tradition or that they are not pre-Columbian at all. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding crystal skulls, ancient artifact or Victorian fake. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The crystal skull story illustrates something important about the antiquities market and its relationship to popular archaeology. The demand for spectacular pre-Columbian artifacts in the 19th century created a thriving forgery industry that produced objects that were plausible, beautiful, and difficult to test with available technology. Modern materials analysis has resolved the question of authenticity for the major skulls, but the mythology around them has proven more durable than the evidence. The crystal skulls continue to attract supernatural claims despite the scientific consensus. This gap between scientific evidence and popular belief is itself a subject worth investigating. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of crystal skulls, ancient artifact or Victorian fake, from the historical record through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of crystal skulls ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.